Hello, and how's everybody doing today? Welcome to the Jefferson County Public Schools Social Emotional Learning Team's Trauma Informed Care Training. Today, in today's training, we're going to be exploring trauma, adverse environments, and issues that can cause our students to go from what I like to call learning brain to survival brain, impacting their learning, impacting their ability to engage in relationships, impacting their ability to trust, impacting their ability to perform on a level that we as educators want our students to perform at to best enhance their lives and futures. So today we're going to talk about a lot of things that are really important to our students and really important to you. Some of these things can be troubling to hear. Some of these things could cause you to have some type of feelings or emotions, right? So it's really important that we get a little check in to see how everybody's feeling today, right? In this mean check in list right here, I want everybody to point out a feeling that you're currently experiencing at the moment or whatnot, just so I can understand the feeling of the room, the mood of the room, right? The mood of the room is really important because we're talking about a subject today that's really important to our students, really important to academic achievement, and really important to the social emotional growth of our students and our positive school culture. So, our training goals today. We want to understand the impact of trauma, right? Trauma is really important because, again, our brain has two prime directives to keep us safe and happy, right? And trauma impacts those things because those experiences become so impactful that our brains become hyper focused on those events. And anything that's similar or reminding of that event or whatnot, our brain picks up on those things and causes some physiological responses as well as some emotional responses, right? And our students have these things in the classroom, and we need to create an environment, a trauma sensitive school environment that can help our students actually navigate these things and feel safe in their environment so they can remain, again, in learning brain, not survival brain, right? We also want to understand the importance of that invisible backpack, right? That backpack that contains those triggers and it contains those things in an environment that can trigger a trauma response and take our students from learning brain into survival brain, right? We also want to gain strategies for supporting students exposed in trauma, right? Gaining those strategies and building relationships with those students is really important. I always use a phrase that I love to utilize with teachers and educators or whatnot with students. Rules without relationship trigger rebellion. If I give you rules and there's no relationship, I can rebel against those rules because I haven't given permission to lead me, right? Students that have experienced trauma have lower levels of trust and can develop what we call I can't language, right? And that language can prevent them from actually developing relationships, can prevent them from actually putting forth efforts in their academics, can prevent them from engaging in things they need to be successful academically, right? So we want to have strategies to help build those relationships and support those students in our environment so we don't have an environment that can create triggers within an environment that keep them from learning. We also want to understand the impact of working with trauma exposed students, right? It's really, there's been multiple studies that show the impact of trauma sensitive school environments and how they can increase learning and influence students' movement on that depth of knowledge chart and help students actually develop ways of learning and dealing with emotional triggers in the environment or dealing with traumatic reminders in the classroom setting so they can remain in learning brain, right? We also want to understand how trauma can impact the family and working towards breaking toxic cycles, right? So again, from a family systems perspective, we don't look at the individual issue with the child. We look at the family as a unit and how the family impacts things, right? And those toxic cycles of trauma and adverse environments that continue to rapidly recycle through child to child, from parent to child, and causing that um, that chain that chain of trauma within that family unit, keeping individuals from reaching their full potential. So, self care is always going to be important. We're also going to discuss yourself and self care because, again, vicarious trauma is real. As we experience our kids and experience experience their experiences, and we want to have empathy with our kids. We want to develop those relationships and those bonds. We can develop some vicarious trauma seeing our kids in those adverse environments, right? So it's really important that I think that we develop what I call healthy selfish, right? Where we selfishly take some time for ourselves to actually take a step out, take breaks, calm ourselves, get ourselves to relax the muscle body, right? Talk to someone we trust, do something relaxing to make sure that we remain and relaxing muscle body, because again, we want to model the behavior that our kids are actually demonstrating. We want our kids to demonstrate so that they can be effective in the classroom, right? So we have to take care of ourselves, right? Vicarious trauma is real and can lead to burnout. So it's really important that you guys learn to take self-care as we teach our kids to actually take self-care. So trauma-sensitive schools has a shared understanding among staff that trauma can impact learning, behavior, and relationships, right? As a holistic approach to helping students feel safe physically, socially, emotionally, and academically, right? So a trauma-sensitive school is going to be all staff operating under a trauma-sensitive fashion or a trauma-informed fashion to make the environment conducive for kids that have experienced trauma, and it helped them actually develop within that learning environment, again, to remaining learning brain, right? But it also builds a form of collective staff efficacy that we're all operating under the same, in the same fashion or whatnot, so kids can actually develop relationships with all staff and not just one or two staff. It helps as a unit develop, like again, a collective staff efficacy that each one teach one, and that all staff is going to deliver that level of care to each student that we reach. So what is trauma and how does it manifest in students? So again, trauma, adverse events can cause our brain, certain parts of our brain, the limbic region of our brain, and even our prefrontal cortex to actually respond to things in a way to keep us safe, right? So again, from a cognitive behavioral perspective, we don't respond to a situation, we respond to how we perceive that situation. When you experience a traumatic event, your brain is hyper focused on never experiencing that event again, right? So there can be reminders in a classroom setting or an academic setting that can make that kid feel as if their trauma is happening again, right? So we need to be aware of that brain activity, because there's certain parts of our brain, like our amygdala, our hippocampus, which controls our memory, our amygdala controls our aggressions and our fears and whatnot, and that sends out signals throughout our brain, right? Our amygdala is like a primitive animal that's barks at everything. A dog that barks at everything, that's hyperly aggressive at everything because it thinks everything's a threat, right? And this bark sends a signal to our brainstem, which controls our involuntary movements, breathing, respiration, cortisol levels, those kind of things. This is how people have panic attacks, right? And also sends signals to our prefrontal cortex, where we have our executive functioning, right, causing us to actually respond with fight, flight, freeze, or even fawn in specific times and whatnot, so we can feel safe, right? We'll talk about those things as we go through our training. Finally, we're going to talk about what is trauma, right? This is witnessing or experiencing an event that poses a real or perceived threat or death, serious injury, or sexual violation. The event and the individual's unique experience and perception of the event. So again, this is an event that poses a real threat or death, serious injury, right? And remember, our brain's prime directive is to keep us safe and happy, right? So these events become so impactful that our brain is hyper focused on things that are similar to it, causing us to actually respond, our brains to respond to keep us safe, even in times when we're not really in jeopardy. We're having those cognitive distortions that are happening that are causing us to actually respond in a manner and takes our kids from learning brain to survival brain.